Cyberpunk 2077 is here. Well, it's not here right now, but by the time this video goes up, it'll be here, so you know. Video game RPGs! A popular category as they allow you to experience a sort of fantasy life that you think really matters. Until the final game, where they throw it down the drain completely in a very unfulfilling mess of a finale that is only differentiated in colors. By the way, I am totally over the ending of this game after 8 years. Fuck. But with so many RPGs, I often ask myself, what differentiates these games from each other? Because at the end of the day, it can be narrowed down to classic tabletop RPG games. When I play an RPG, I usually put them in a category of one of two types of RPG games. Can I say the word RPG any more fucking times? D&D style games where the player creates an entirely new character that you are intended to make your own story and create your own path and solve problems your own way. This will be your Fallout New Vegas, Planescape Torments, and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Then there are games where you'll put on a set character and or path that you follow, but there are big choices and consequences that alter how the path can go, like a choose your own adventure book. This will be your Mass Effect, Witcher 3, and a lot of JRPGs like Persona and Fire Emblem. These two categories of games are trying to achieve a similar goal. They want the player to be immersed in the game world, and they also have a character that you see through the eyes and experience the world from, but the execution is very different from one another. So let's say you and me go on a safari adventure and go deeper to see what these games do right and how they achieve it. Also, a quickie dicky disclaimer, I will be spoiling things from all these games up here, so if you haven't played any of these, here's your warning now. Are we good? Alright class, take out your notes, let's begin. So starting off, we have games that are very clearly based off of D&D or other tabletop games of a similar fashion. These games start off with you creating a character in a similar way that you would build a character in a tabletop game. You put points in different stats, select different traits, and have your character specialize in skills that match the type of person you want to play as. And when you sit down and look at the things like the skills to level in New Vegas, the races in Elder Scrolls, or the clans in Vampire Masquerade, it's very clear that this character is intended to be your own. And this is supported with the next point I'm going to make. The world you're thrown into introduces a large amount of characters and NPCs that complement the character that you make by giving you a variety of ways to solve problems and conflicts you get yourself into. And if the developers are smart, they will create different sections of the map with extra care and create missions that are able to be completed in a variety of ways and have different consequences depending on your choices. For example, in Vampire the Masquerade, there is a girl that's trapped in a hospital. So after a little investigating, you come across this creepy ass doctor guy that is being a complete dick to you. So by this little interaction, we are now a little more intrigued to investigate more. In my case, I snuck around the area, was able to find the girl, and made my way out. But uh-oh, we're in big trouble now. The creepy dickhead doctor came back and he's not having it. Oh no, what am I supposed to do? It's not like I'm an all-powerful fucking vampire or anything. But it was at this point where I had the option to laugh maniacally to the point where it manipulated him into laughing with me. So much so that he forgot what was happening and let me go, and I was able to complete the quest. But the cool thing is that this was just my experience with the quest, and if you look at all these options, there are so many ways someone could approach this situation. Hell, you could just kill the fucker right when you see him if you want to, and the world would react accordingly to the player's choice. In Fallout New Vegas, God bless his divine soul, there are dialogue options that appear later in the game that appear based on your relationship with a specific faction. This is important because it shows that the game is recognizing how you're treating different types of people in the world, and how you have acted with different factions. Not only that, but even lesser NPCs will show appreciation for the good deeds you do by giving you little weapon caches and giving you armor that matches the faction you fight for. And the factions you have been fucking with, Yeah, they're not happy with how much of a degenerate you've been. They're going to be sending assassins after you, and if you take one step in their territory, they will be nailing you to a cross while they constantly scream, "Retribution." And I could go on and on about how insanely in-depth the reputation system is for this game, and mention how even little things like the towns will have different opinions on you depending on what you do to or for them. But the main idea in making a game like this is to have NPCs that feel real and make their own opinions about you and the world around them, to make them feel more relatable and make the world come to life. The final piece I want to focus on is the way the quests work in this game, most especially the main quests. In games like these, the main quests are usually, for lack of a better word, an afterthought. Not necessarily to the developers, but to the players. And the reason why is, why would you want to rush through the end of the game? You wouldn't do that in a D&D session, unless you're in the annoying-ass half-elf ranger. You know who you are. But instead, you're most likely going to play the main quest very sparingly. You know, play enough to get someone on your side, get some good gear, and then kill them with the same weapon they gave you. But no, the real thing you're interested in are those oh-so-beautiful side missions. And in a good game, side missions will be some of the more interesting and engaging shit to do. Like trying to find a vampire hunter posing as a stripper, saving a sick child from a disease, or convincing two people and a robot to work as prostitutes for a low-budget casino. Can you see why I love this game so much? But the thing about the quests that stays in line with the game world and the characters is that these quests, whether they're serious or silly or menial tasks, is that they make sense in the context of the world. And while they all don't have to do this, but some quests can even play a part in the final mission and give you an advantage when you need it. And this is great because it creates a moment of pride where you look back at all the things you did in your adventure and think, all this happened because of me and my interactions with other people in the game world. And that's the appeal of Dungeons & Dragons. While these games suffer from limitations, a lot of fucking bugs, and will never be as open-ended or as in-depth as the classic tabletop games that they're inspired from, they're still essentially games that were made by a really good dungeon master. Now we get into the more linear and scripted games. As I mentioned before, the games that fall into this category are a lot more reduced when it comes to making a new character, and making choices that reflect the type of person you want to be, while they definitely still have aspects of that. So let's go through the elements that we went through before and explain how they are different. Starting off, you'll notice that not a lot of these games have a character customization, and even when they do, you'll almost always be the character that the writers want you to be. Even if you change his name, you'll always be Shepard, or Geralt, or Byleth, or Joker. And no, I'm not calling him anything else other than that. And while this may sound like a bad thing, as it's restricting the player's freedom of choice, it's doing it with reason. You may not relate with a jacked up, white-haired Henry Cavill looking guy, but one, at least you like him, and two, you still influence his choices, which leads to the next point, the choices, and how they're different from the games before. The Witcher 3 has been claimed for having some incredible quests that lead to difficult decisions, and unlike the D&D style games where you have a variety of options to complete the quest, the options in The Witcher are restricted to one of two or sometimes three options, and the only determining factor is which potential timeline you choose. And while these choices may be limited and not as in-depth compared to the D&D style games, it creates a much more difficult and meaningful choice because you actually have to think about the consequences of one decision compared to another. And after you make that choice and all the consequences and actions play out, it gives you either a feeling of relief or disappointment, or sometimes both. Especially in The Witcher, as there are cases where neither choice is better than the other, which creates a discussion on which choice is the better option, and players can discuss why. This is something that's missing in a game like The Outer Worlds, where it always felt like there was a best case scenario option, which decreased the tension and intrigue from the choices I made in that game. While the choices that these games bring have more of a limit, and the story for the most part, especially for these games, is more linear, the RPG element comes from the way you interact with other characters, and the friends you made along the way. For example, the Mass Effect games and Fire Emblem Three Houses on Classic Mode, it is possible for characters to die, and they don't come back. The game accepts this, and you just have to live with it. Or, just restart whenever your favorite waifu dies. I won't let them take you. And this adds to the reason why the protagonists in these games aren't as open-ended as the former, because in these games, you're taking the place of these pre-existing characters and role-playing how they act in the moment, which leads to their involvement with other characters. Okay. I am going to say this next part as calm as I can. Question. Who can Joker get with? Answer. Whoever the fuck you want! That's one of the great features of this game, and with how flexible Joker's character is, it makes all the relationships make sense. Joker can get with one of them, all of them, none of them, and the game accepts it. That's what makes it an RPG. And it's also why people on Reddit need to shut the fuck up over who they think the canon girlfriend is. Because it doesn't fucking matter, you goddamn losers. Go out and get your own girlfriend, you fucking idiots. And yes, that includes me. Waifu wars aside, the relationships with other characters in these games is another important factor that makes these games memorable. The end result in Mass Effect 3 might be the same, where The Witcher 3 might only have 3 possible endings to pick from, but the people you interact with will change depending on how they feel about you. Someone who romances Tali will experience different scenes in dialogue from someone who romances Liara, and the characters around will even sometimes comment on the relationship, or even form their own. Not just romantic relationships are a factor. Looking at Persona and Fire Emblem, there are different stats depending on how deep your bond with a specific character is. And in the case of these games, these aren't just for show, it actually makes a difference when you're in battle. And while it may be a dumb anime trope, this is a good way to show how the characters have grown and learned to work together better as time goes on throughout the game. And speaking of other characters forming their own relationships, that is a large part of Fire Emblem, as the bonds aren't just for the protagonists, but with the other characters as well, making them feel more real, instead of just constantly sucking the dick of the protagonist like some shitty anime I know. But anyway, while these games might not give you complete say on who or what your character is, it still puts you into a situation where you have to think and consider your actions, and has you roleplay as the protagonist, influencing who he or she spends their time with and how they do it. And on a surface level, it is more appealing and less intimidating to new players, much like how a Choose Your Own Adventure book is compared to D&D. So, what are some of the problems that game designers should watch out for when making an RPG? Well, I think one big one to address is when the creators of the game just don't fully commit to the type of RPG they want to make. A game I'm sure you're all familiar with, Fallout 4. Though it was a technical improvement from New Vegas and 3 gameplay-wise and introduced some interesting characters with neat concepts, the game ultimately fails as the RPG it's based on. One of the reasons why is the protagonist. You can completely change how your shithead will look like, and for once they won't look like a Barbie doll, but right at the start of the game restricts you with being one of these two people. Codsworth might call me by my name, but as far as I'm aware, my character's always going to be Nate or Nora, and they're going to want to find their kid, even though I don't give two shits about them. This wouldn't be a problem if the Fallout series is known for being a choose-your-own-adventure game like Mass Effect, but it's not. It's meant to be a self-inserted RPG, where you make your own character and find your own path through the wasteland. Another game that went through this problem is Dragon Age 2, and the blame could be due to the success of Mass Effect at the time. Something worth bringing up is that before Mass Effect, the games that BioWare worked on were very similar to the D&D style games mentioned prior. Games like KOTOR and Dragon Age Origins started with you making your own character. The game was very flexible in letting you choose your own path, with both dialogue and gameplay. Fuck, I just realized I didn't talk about KOTOR once in this video. But in Dragon Age 2, they got a little carried away by the success of Mass Effect, and you are way more limited on who your character is and how they act. And this has become a problem just like in Fallout 4. It's losing its touch on what made the previous games in the series great, and it's trying to be something that it's not. Another problem that plagues these games are repetitive and uninspired quests. Now, I do feel bad for saying this because even in really good games, there's going to be a lot of missions and quests that are going to be repetitive or uninspired or just not as interesting as the last, and it's really hard to make every quest feel unique. But it's at the very least important to change the context of what we're doing. Because, and you probably all know what I'm about to say, is going up to Preston and getting told about another settlement in your fucking area really the best thing you got for me? Because to be honest, I think you can do a little bit better than that. And to make matters worse, in almost every single one of these missions, it allows almost no freedom and no way to change what a potential outcome could be for what this mission could play out as. Because it almost always will involve you killing a bunch of raiders and saving someone from a settlement. The only choice you have is you'll do it or you won't. And even when you say no, it really just means yes. One of the worst things that can happen to these games is when the story just has no stakes and doesn't involve the player's choices. And one of the biggest examples of that I can think of is Mass Effect Andromeda. When I played Mass Effect Andromeda, I felt way less like I was making an influence in Ryder's character, and I just felt more like I was along for the ride. It was kind of like playing a Telltale game. You know, I'm not exactly in control of the moment. I'm just kind of influencing what my character says. I'm just in an interactive movie, in a way. Despite its faults and despite the ending, Mass Effect 3 still had some big moments where the character's choice really did matter. And I'm sure a lot of moments are going to come to mind. And especially for a finale, it really felt significant. Hell, even in Mass Effect 1, there were choices that completely changed how the other two games went. Like whether or not Rex would live, or deciding who would survive Vermeer. And yeah, I might have a say on who Ryder gets with, or any of the small little details like that. But by the end of the game, it doesn't feel earned. I may have had fun doing it, and I may have killed the final boss, but it felt like I didn't have a choice. Like that was the only choice I had. No moment where I stopped and looked back and think about all the choices I did before and what led me to this moment, because none of those led me to this moment. This moment would have played out regardless of what I chose. And honestly, that sums up all these games as a whole. Hell, these aren't even really bad games. Hell, I still have fun playing all of these games. It's fun to fight stuff, blow shit up, and explore. But I don't feel like I'm part of the world. I'm just mindlessly killing. And if I wanted that, I might as well play COD. Wow, that ended on a really negative note. Huh. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This one took a long time to make. And as you can imagine, this... I kind of got pretty lucky with when I was able to finish it, but I'm so excited to play Cyberpunk. It's probably coming out the day of this video's going out, like I said before, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited, and especially in the fucking year that we've had so far, and we finally have something good to look forward to and good to fucking play after just an entire year of bullshit. So once again, any of you guys who have been subscribed to me for any amount of time, I appreciate it. I love you, and I thank you for your support. I really appreciate it, and I just like doing this, and you know, I just here's hoping for a better time next year. But I hope you guys enjoy the game if you're getting it, and stay beautiful.